Hello, everyone. This is another Black Conservative. I am Ryan Bolin. Thank you all for joining me. What I want to talk about in this video is there is a new gun law that's being passed in Oregon that has caused the LGBT community to rise up and push against this new gun law because they believe that this new gun law is making them vulnerable to further attack. Now, as we know, what happened in Oregon was that we had that mass shooting where that guy went in there and started shooting all the people in it. And what was it, a nightclub, and began to just go in and start shooting people in the LGBT community. And many people in the LGBT, that name, those words. I'm trying to be politically correct here. Many people in that community, in that area, are pushing against this new law because they feel this new gun law, because they feel this gun law is going to make them more vulnerable to further attacks. Now, before I read this article, let me just point out and say, this just goes to show you that the very political party, okay, that claim that they're for the LGBTQ community are the very political party that says, hey, if you're going to come against what our agenda is, we're going to come against you. Clearly, the way I see it, they don't care. The Democratic Party of today doesn't care. But I'm going to elaborate on that after we read this article. I'm going to elaborate on that further in my commentary. But let's get right into this. And it says, members of Oregon's LGBTQ community are worried they may not be able to acquire guns and will therefore be vulnerable if the gun controls in ballot measure 114, in parentheses BM 114, are allowed to take effect. The controls in BM 114 are currently on hold via a temporary restraining order, but further hearings on the specific distinct controls in the measure could result in a partial or complete enactment. NPR reports that, quote, some of Oregon's trans and queer gun supporters are worried that a new state law will prevent them from buying firearms. Their concerns center on BM 114's provision requiring law enforcement to issue permits to purchase guns. Isn't that something? Some members of the LGBTQ community fear there is not enough guidance on the issuance process, leaving the door open for law enforcement to deny permits based on unclear criteria. That's the whole goal anyway. That's the whole goal. But let's go on. NPR notes, quote, that's a problem for activists who have critiqued law enforcement, particularly in the racial justice protests that took place over the past 2 years. LGBTQ community member Maya Rose observed, quote, I just feel like if I was to go online and say like the police are terrorists or something, the police would be like, well, you seem like you might not be fit for this community to be armed. Now, let me say this right up front. That's kind of strange. If they say, well, you police are terrorists, you know, why would the police say, well, you're not fit to be armed? I don't know. Maybe they feel like, well, if you think that we're terrorists, you're going to arm yourself so you can fight against us. Maybe that's the reason for that. But let's go on. If they were to get that information that you got snatched up off the streets, arrested during the Portland protest prompted by the killing of George Floyd in 2020, I would assume that the law would say they could deny your purchase or deny your right to have a permit. The tension between gun control proponents and some members of the LGBT community has been increasing for years. On June 14th, now listen to this, on June 14, 2016, just 2 days after the heinous attacks on Orlando's Pulse nightclub, reported that a pro-LGBTQ group called the Pink Pistols was citing the attack as an example of the importance of being armed to defend one's life. And this is the first time I've heard of this group, of this LGBTQ group. And this is the first time, honestly, I've heard of people who are in that community to be for guns. You know, I actually haven't heard of it before. But I find that interesting. I find that they're interesting that you have people from that community, from the left, who are pro-gun, you know. Because I see here all the time, the ones on the left are always against guns. It does go on. The Pulse attacker was armed with a rifle and a handgun during his attack, but Pink Pistol's Gwen Patton suggested the real problem is the hate that led the attacker to use the guns against others. Patton said, quote, he might have walked in wearing a suicide vest. He might have walked in with a pressure cooker bomb. The problem was that a human being had so much hate and rage in him that he decided to commit a heinous act. And let me read you something else here. Let's see, because I want to get into my commentary, but I wanted you to get the gist of this article. Okay. So here's something that someone who's against gun control says. Penny Okamata, executive director of the gun control group Ceasefire Oregon, countered Patton by pushing red flag laws and other gun control measures. Now listen to what this knucklehead says. He says, if the gun is just a tool, let's make that tool safer. Let's make sure we've got chamber loaded indicators on that. Let's make sure we've got magazine disconnect mechanisms, and let's get rid of the assault weapons because those are not safe weapons, end quote, right there. That to me sounds really, really weird and strange. How are you going to make the tools safer? That's like trying to say, well, let's make these knives safer. Just recently, I believe it was in America, either in America or Great Britain. I cannot remember exactly where this happened, but you're going to get the general gist of what I'm trying to push here. This guy comes in and I think he stabs 2 people to death with a knife. And this argument that this person is leveling here would have to be applicable to the knife situation. Let's make this tool safer. If the knife is just a tool, let's make this tool safer. How are we going to make this knife safer? Oh, let's make it less sharper. You know, let's take the tip of it. Let's clip the tip of the pointy tip off so you can't stab nobody. I mean, it makes no difference. Let me read further. Let me read that part here. Let me go back to the part where the pro-gun person made this statement about the problem. He says the problem was that a human being had so much hate and rage in him that he decided to commit a heinous act. So I'm going to stop right there. That's where the issue is. The issue is it stands as it always does. Well, my argument has always been, and it's going to always stay that way because I don't see any counter arguments that are good enough for me to support, is that guns don't kill people, people kill people. Knives don't kill people, people kill people. And the whole idea of saying, let's get rid of the AR-15s and all this kind of stuff, the reason why I believe personally that these crazy people use AR-15s is because they're convenient. You can kill more people with them. That's why they use them. Guns are more convenient. That's why they use them. Trying to get rid of guns is not the problem. The problem and the issue is what is going on in the hearts and minds of these people. Just like this LGBT community person said, this person that came in and shot up all those people years ago in 2016. And let me say something about that. Dozens of people were murdered in that area. Dozens of people were killed. Dozens of people in the gay community were murdered. It's amazing. It's amazing how we can go from one mass murder event to the next and forget that this stuff even happened. It's amazing how our feelings have been numbed down by this kind of violence. But the point is that this person who did this obviously had a dark heart. Something was going on in their mind and in their innermost being that caused them to go in there and kill up all dozens of innocent people. Same scenario here. Same scenario anywhere. And these people, members of the LGBT community here in this particular incidents have a right to feel the way they feel. And I agree. It more than likely will make them more vulnerable. Like it would make people in the heterosexual community vulnerable. But let me point this out. The modern day Democratic Party has been infiltrated by communists. I totally believe in that. I've been studying that for quite some time, and I've been reading up on that for quite some time. And I talked about this in a previous video about the so-called 45 communist goals that was written by a former FBI agent many decades ago, back in like 1958, 1959, something along that line. And he wrote a book called The Naked Communist, which I own. And in that book, he lists 45 communist goals. Now, this was a former FBI agent. Now, that doesn't mean that his assessment was totally accurate and totally true, and there's nothing else because he's an FBI agent, he's totally true. But it does add some credibility to his book, the fact that he was an FBI agent who infiltrated the Communist Party. Okay, at that time, he infiltrated the Communist Party in America that had infiltrated our political arena. Now, one of the goals of the 45 communist goals was to infiltrate the current political party, either both parties or one, and take them over. I honestly believe that the Democratic Party of today is not the Democratic Party of the 30s and the 40s, even though I don't support the Democratic Party because I don't support their worldviews and their policies anymore. This new Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party of the past. These are many of these people are communists posing as Democrats, and one of the goals, one of the communist goals, was to one of the 45 communist goals was to infiltrate the political party here in America, take both over or one over, and I believe that they took over the Democratic Party. Now, here's the thing. The communists in other countries such as Russia, China, Cuba, and other countries, when they would infiltrate those countries, one of the goals that they would initiate was to get rid of all weapons, particularly guns. The reason for that was not to prevent crime. They could have cared less about that. The reason for taking the guns from the civilians was so that the people could not have a way to rise up against their oppressive regime that they knew would be oppressive. They knew it would be oppressive. They knew it. That was the whole goal, was total control. They didn't want anyone to be able to rise up and defend themselves against a tyrannical government. So they stripped their guns from them in every last one of those communist countries that were taken over by the communists. The same situation here in America. The difference is that the communists that infiltrated our political parties and infiltrated our institutions, our educational institutions, and infiltrated our churches and ministries, and infiltrated our school systems, and infiltrated our entertainment industry, know that they just can't come in America and say, I'm going to take your guns from you. So what they do is they use legislation. Let's create legislation that will bit by bit, piece by piece, strip people's ability to have guns from them to the point where they no longer can get guns or they are discouraged from buying guns. That's the point. They have a goal. They have an agenda. They have a vision. And if you are on their side or claim to be on their side, like the LGBT community say they are, if you speak out against their agenda, they're going to come against you. You're just a useful tool. You're just a useful idiot to them. Now, that's not my words. Those were the words, I believe, of Statler, former communist Statler, who made those statements. Either Statler or Lenin, forgive me but it was one of those communist leaders made that statement in the book that he wrote. Okay, that these people are useful idiots. A useful idiot is some idealistic person who's been brainwashed by that communist government to help them push their communist regime. Once their communist regime has been initiated, then those individuals are taken out of the picture. You was a useful idiot. We did what we needed to do. We've accomplished our goal. We've accomplished our dream. We've accomplished our mission. Now we don't need you. Okay? We don't need you. And that's what these people in the LGBT community who are voting these communists in office really are to them. You just useful idiots. They don't care about your safety. They don't care about who you are, whatever. They care about power and control. And to me, this is a perfect example of the communists who have infiltrated the Democratic Party. And this is a perfect example of the fact that they don't care about the fact that you a member of the LGBT community or trans community or whatever. They don't care about that. They care about gun control. They care about their agenda. That's what they care about. And that's what they're pushing. And to me, this is a perfect example of that agenda. So that's my opinion on that. What do you guys think? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. God bless you all and see you again.